Come on up. So your ordinance does a couple of things, and I am under the impression that it's meant to do one thing. And the one thing that I'm under the impression that it is meant to do is to stop the feeding of the parakeets in the parks, not stop the feeding of all birds in all parks across San Francisco. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, I'd say that's fairly accurate. I think that although in the research that I've done around this issue since I knew it was coming to committee, I've been apprised of the sort of broader threat that can be posed to other birds, not just red-masked parakeets in parks. I believe that that's, this ordinance did grow out of a concern about a problem with a specific place. So yeah, I think that your summation is accurate.
Okay, then how about, pardon me, changing it, and Madam City Attorney, so that it would read the way that essentially that it had already read, that it had already been written. It shall be unlawful for any person to feed or offer food to any bird or wild animal in or any sidewalk, street, or highway of the city and county of San Francisco. So it basically would be exactly the way it is. And then to add another sentence that would say it would be unlawful to feed the red-masked parakeet in any park, or something to that effect. And I have not discussed this with Supervisor Jew because we're not allowed to discuss things.
Yes.
So Supervisor Jew, if you'd like to.
I basically think that there's unintended consequences in this, and I understand that we're trying to to protect these red-masked parakeets, but I think this legislation goes beyond that, and it's going to make criminals out of our seniors and children that are going to be feeding our ducks and so forth in the parks. And I remember when I was a little kid, and my grandmother and grandfather would take me to Golden Gate Park, and I had a chance to feed breadcrumbs. And I think we need to be more specific if we're going to do something of this sort. And I don't want to make sure that our children are going to be called criminals feeding birds. So I think.
I certainly wouldn't want to rob you of that valuable childhood memory, but I hear exactly where you're coming from, and this legislation is born out of an attempt to try and balance the potential harm to the birds and to humans actually too. I would ask that while the supervisor Aaron is not around, if you would be willing to continue this to the call of the chair while we discuss these changes to make sure they're targeted exactly at what we're hoping to do, and I'd love to talk to your office supervisors to make sure that they don't overreach too far.
Well, the one I am on Supervisor Jew's page. I don't want to see the Palace of Fine Arts, children going down to the Palace of Fine Arts with their little picnics, not able to feed the ducks. That just, the idea of it angers me, quite frankly.
Well, you're certainly welcome to make that change.
I think that what we'll do today, Mr. Noyola, is perhaps we'll move forward with the amendments so that will be completely off the table, and then we can have further conversations on whether or not we should even be dealing with the red-masked parakeets at Ferry Park, because
Okay.
I think that's what this legislation is specifically targeted towards.
But we'll keep it here in the committee for further discussion.
So we will keep it here in the committee, but I would like to, first we would like to pass those amendments to have those changes made. Is that all right with you, Supervisor Jew?
If it is, if it's just basically the red-masked parakeets, I think, and it's only the Ferry Park issue, correct? I don't think it's a citywide issue.
I think we would still be interested in having the limitation on feeding parakeets in any park.
In any park?
They're not in every park.
I mean, are they traveling? I mean, I want to talk. I mean, are these parakeets flying over to Golden Gate Park?
Yeah, they do. They fly all over the city.
Okay.
So,
Supervisor
yes,
Pascal, welcome.
Sorry,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Supervisor Jew, I've been in and out of meetings. I'm trying to catch this out of the corner of my eye in the middle of a meeting in my office, but was watching this out of the corner of my eye. I think that Chair Alioto-Pier's observations relative to the impetus for the legislation is correct, and I wholeheartedly support the notion that it be limited to this bird, and it could be amended in the future if there are other birds where there's a demonstrable reason to ban their feeding. As a matter of fact, the health code currently has a provision that allows the Director of Public Health to ban feeding of certain kinds of birds. And it's because of the way it's written, it is vague, and it does not create that admonition that I think the public needs to know relative to the preponderance of the evidence that feeding the wild parrots is both not good and healthy for the birds as well as potentially dangerous for the feeders. And to that end, I would support the amendment that Supervisor Alioto-Pier has put forward. Relative to limiting it to a specific park, I would tend not to support that because there are a number of parks and there are actually 2 flocks of parrots in different parts of the city, and parks is a very likely place where this type of behavior occurs. And so I think if you go with the amendment to do red-masked parakeets in parks, that should take care of it, and I would support it and urge you to send it to the full board with that amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Peskin.